You are listening to The Insider with Brian Lloyd. The opinions expressed are that of the individuals and can sometimes be of an adult nature.
Today we are talking to Gary Lennon, the director of A Doctor's Sword. A Doctor's Sword is a new documentary that follows a young woman who tries to reunite a samurai sword with its original owner. Gary, thanks for joining us. First off, how did you come into this story? I mean, how did you find out about it?
Yeah, I've been working on this project since 2010, and it's actually a little bit older than that. The producer of the project, Bob Jackson, was working in a bar in Cork city centre in 2000.
Right.
And late at night, one of the regulars used to tell him this story about an Irish doctor who survived the atomic bomb in Nagasaki. And each night he'd give him a little bit more information, and Bob realistically felt that that was a kind of a tall tale, and he didn't believe him. But the 28th time that he told him, he did say, like, listen, there's a book written by Dr. McCarthy on this. I'm not just making this up. So the next day, Bob went down to the library, he got the book, and he kind of read it all in one sitting. It really is a remarkable story of survival that Dr. McCarthy did. And myself and Bob became friends over the Christmas of 2009. And I was working in television and also trying to get a few documentaries going. And Bob asked me to do it then. So that was that was the Christmas of 2009. And we started shooting in 2010. And that was our first shoot. We went down to the McCarthy's in Castletownbere. They have this kind of amazing pub, McCarthy's Bar.
I've heard of it,
Yeah, it was also like the subject of a book by Pete McCarthy and a BBC radio series. So there is something in the air there.
Yeah,
there is
definitely.
Yeah. And we went down there and shot the two daughters and Adrienne and Nikki, and also their mum Kathleen. So that's when it started, July of 2010.
As you said it yourself, I mean, the story is just so almost unbelievable in a way. It almost kind of lends itself to like a TV mini series or something like that, that kind of way. I'm just wondering, why did you choose a documentary over, say, a feature narrative or something like that?
Yeah, it was just a bias, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I felt that the story itself had an epic cinematic quality to it. This was a man who survived Dunkirk, this POW for many years, and all these other events that happened to him. And I thought that stretching that out over a number of episodes and kind of a series, that would really make it just for the history buffs,
right?
Or certainly I had a little bit of a fear of that. So myself and Bob just felt that this was something that was suitable for the big screen. And naturally enough, it's Ireland, it's a small country, and its finance is difficult. So we kind of we had a few kind of chinks in the road as we tried to get financed, but eventually we got great support by the BAI and also the Irish Film Board. And then later on we got support from UCC and the Cork City and County Council. So all of them together allowed us to get it up onto the big screen.
Just actually on that topic, actually, BAI funding and Irish Film Board funding does seem to be quite scarce nowadays, and it does seem to be quite a slog to get it made and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, I don't want to know the particulars of it or whatever, but I'm just curious. Do you think they seem to be favouring, documentary stories that focus on Irish people? I mean, because, you hear things like certain directors aren't able to get funded anymore and they're having trouble with it. I mean, how was your experience with it, do you think?
Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Film Board, but in a general sense, due to the financial crisis, they had their budget cut by something like 50 or 60%. So just from a practical perspective, there's less money in the pot.
Of course, yeah.
For every single person in the industry, it's a struggle to get finance. It doesn't really matter who you are. So that they're kind of just two kind of very truisms.
Yeah.
So then, in terms of, the Film Board was set up primarily to do fiction films. So there is a percentage that is for documentaries, and that is kind of ring-fenced. So there are parameters that they're working within. So they're widely known. They have to work within those. And then in terms of the BAI, they're a different beast. Their main funding is through the Sound and Vision scheme, and that is there's kind of 5 or 6 criteria that they have. And I'd be lying if I knew what they all were off the top of my head. But the main one for the television industry is to do television programs on Irish culture, heritage, or experience. And there's other ones on promoting adult literacy, the Irish language, and a few others. I think there's 6 of them, and to my shame, I can't remember them off the top of my head. But the main ones are, the culture, heritage, and the Irish experience. So within that framework, you've got you have to try and allocate your story or your program series around that. And to apply for the BAI funding, you also have to have a partnership with one of the TV channels, and the TV channels have to give you a letter of support to say that they will broadcast it on peak viewing time. So you have to have a few things in place before, and then that Sound and Vision scheme it comes out a couple of times a year.
That's right, yeah. I'm just curious as well, just about the film itself, because obviously it's about World War II, it's about an RAF doctor and so on and so forth. I mean, as I was watching it and as I was reading the story of it, I was thinking, God, this will travel really well, because this is the kind of story that will, Americans could watch this very easily on Netflix or something like that.
Yeah.
People could follow it on iTunes or whatever. I mean, was that your kind of... I mean, I don't want to be so cynical as to say, like, yes, this will travel and this is exactly the only reason we made it, but that must have been a point of going into it, surely.
Well, I think his story transcends any nationality, and I certainly don't want this to only appear on screens in Cork, for example. I'd certainly like it to travel the world. It's in certain film festivals around the world. It's going to, and we're hoping to get international theatrical releases. We have an international distributor in place, so that's all happening at the moment. We really hope that kicks in after a successful Irish theatrical run. And so far, it's been great. Like we've had a week extension in the IFI. Also down in Cork in the Mahon Point Omniplex, they've also extended it for another week, so that'll be 3 weeks there. It's starting in the Triskel this weekend, and certainly we hope to roll that out into Kerry, Galway, and any other cinemas that people would like to see it in. So please, if you'd like to see it in your cinema, let us know. Go see it.
And just actually on that point, I mean, obviously it's getting a theatrical release and that's fantastic and all this, but you do notice that a lot of independent documentaries do seem to be getting a day and date release for video on demand. I mean, was that something you considered?
Yeah, it was, but I just felt that this story had the ability to be a bit of a slow burner and build up a lot of good word of mouth press. So those day and date releases, they seem to really work well for very well established fan bases. For example, there was one on the Spandau Ballet done about 6 months or maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
So for Spandau Ballet have this huge passionate fan base of girls
who were
teenagers in the 1980s.
Yeah.
So they have this fan club and they have this this support well. So by having them, they had this big multi-screen release on the same day. So it really suits a project like that. Whereas in this, Dr. McCarthy is a relatively obscure figure to the broader public in Ireland, not just the world. So I didn't think it suited it so much. So that was the logic behind that.
Makes sense. The animation that's in it, that works throughout it, where was the inspiration from that? I mean, because it seemed almost like it was that sort of Japanese kind of kabuki thing. Was that the inspiration for it?
Yeah, you've hit it in the head there. It's like Dr. McCarthy, we had a radio interview with him, and also like the style of his book. He has these incredible experiences, but he really understates them.
Yeah, they're very
in his book, he talks about the atomic bomb and covers it in 4 pages, whereas most people would have a book over the atomic bomb. So I think his the impact of what he says is heightened by that. So we were trying to find a form to be able to marry that visually, and there's a few options. I'm kind of allergic to recreations, and I thought one of his experiences in the war was, it's one of trauma. He was a POW, so he was starved and he was beaten, and he also then, our starting point of the story is when he has a stroke and he suffers amnesia. So I just felt that by having the animation, it would allow this kind of otherworldliness, this kind of dislocation, this just sense of just being slightly at a different level. And I thought that animation would allow us to do that. And it also then just gave us the ability to recreate things like the atomic bomb, Dunkirk, which we wouldn't have been able to do in another format. So it was a combination of those things. And then stylistically, like we really liked what Waltz with Bashir did.
I was actually going to say that. It really reminded me of Waltz with Bashir. Yeah, it was really similar. Yeah,
it was Waltz with Bashir, and also like a lot of manga comics. I'd be kind of an Asian geek. I'm very much into
like
that
Akira,
stuff.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of that, and then also trying to use some of the Western images from World War II era, like the Kitchener "Your Country Needs You" poster and those recruitment posters. So the animator Ronan Coyle, he actually did every single frame of all the animation himself. So it was really a remarkable effort in terms of skill and volume. So that was kind of the thinking behind why we went for the animation.
Yeah. Just to come back to it, and I know I keep harping on about it, but just because as I was watching, I was thinking, God, this would be a really, really good film. If, let's say, just hypothetically tomorrow, big studio came in and offered you X amount of money to go off and make the film, I mean, would you rather do a larger budget documentary, or would you do a larger budget narrative, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would rather do a larger budget narrative.
Yeah. I think that's kind of kind of obvious, but it is. It's just like it's. I mean, look, I'm not knocking the documentary format at all.
Sure.
But I like it is one of those stories that it just seems so big and just so. You're almost like how did this actually happen? You know, but
it's epic in scale.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
It is epic in scale. You know, as I said, you know, not too many people survive being executed from a grave that they've dug themselves by the atomic bomb falling. You know, it's really,
that's what I'm saying.
Quite remarkable.
Yeah.
And that's one of many things that he's done. So, I do think it has a future on the big screen in a narrative form.
Have you talked to anybody about it?
Yeah, this process is happening at the moment, yeah.
Anything you'd like to share with us?
Well, it's just we're just at very early stages.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you mentioned there that there was Asian influences in Asian comics and so on and so forth. I mean, were there any? And we mentioned Waltz with Bashir. I mean, were there any other documentaries or any films that you watched to kind of give you a bit of creative, juices you're making it?
I think there are, and I'm just struggling to think of them as I say it.
Because like the explosion part of it looked very like Akira. That really reminded me of Akira.
One of the documentaries that when we were actually over in Japan, we met a sword expert, and it's the Japanese Emperor's army marches on, and it's really a masterpiece. It's about a Japanese soldier who tries to track down his all the different guys in his battalion. And they were in the jungles of Southeast Asia, and they survived by
cannibalism.
I
saw that. I actually saw that. Yes, I did see that. Yeah.
And one of the things that it does fantastically well is that this guy is absolutely cracked. You know.
Yeah.
He's
was, like really accusatory. I remember that he goes into their village.
You know, he served time for throwing a bomb at the emperor, and the epilogue at the end is that he's back in prison serving time.
That's right. I remember that.
But what Japanese society has this veneer of politeness and. As a result, they don't talk about the war. They just don't talk. It's not like the German experience at all. They just don't talk about it at all. So when we were over in Japan, we would hear these people. We would get to know people, and they would ask us very, very elementary questions, and we're like, really, like you actually think the atomic bomb was blown by the wind, so that's why it missed Tokyo. And that was in the textbooks of Japan. So. The other thing that Japan did is that, as opposed to actually kind of holding up their hands, they gave kind of gifts. So they gave gifts to China and they gave gifts to Korea without actually acknowledging their guilt. Yeah. So having watched that film, we did try and use that as a way to try and find out a little bit more about the Japanese take on the wartime experience, and then also just allow the different Japanese people we met. Just to give them a bit of just air, so that they could talk to us about their experience. And some of the people we met were on very different sides of the political spectrum. We met one woman who was in charge of the Japanese POW Association. She is in the Japanese POW Association. And that's an organization which tries to tell Japanese people about what they did to the POWs. And then on the other side, we have a Japanese sword expert. And something that we learned on the journey was that swords are illegal in Japan. Like we tried to bring the sword into Japan, but it's actually illegal to do so.
Wow.
They have a similarity to the Nazi symbol in Germany. They're actually they're considered part of the fascist period. Right. So it's not allowed to have them. So one of the people we met was trying to change that. So it's safe to say he wasn't on the left.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So with all those things, it's something that Japanese culture is quite dense. Yeah. And when you're trying to get into it, especially with the language difficulties, and actually more importantly is the cultural differences. It's actually what isn't said is more important than what is said a lot of the time. Yeah. So that was kind of fascinating. So all of us would have watched countless Japanese docs. And then we'd have experienced, we'd have watched a lot of wartime docs, from Showa to something else that I thought that was quite interesting. It was just a lot of the other docs that we've seen over the years about trying to keep a compelling journey going.
Yeah.
So we do have Dr. McCarthy's story, but then we also have Nikki's, his daughter's story, as she goes to Japan to try and track down the Japanese family. So, just seeing things such as, searching for Sugar Man or other things like that, that kind of keep someone interesting as they go on this journey with you. So it kind of like a big hodgepodge there.
Definitely.
That type of stuff.
Tons of influences. You mentioned there that, the Japanese culture and so on, and the people that you interviewed, have they seen it? Have they seen the film?
No, actually,
Really?
they haven't. We're still waiting. We're in negotiations with a Japanese distributor and also and their big documentary festival is on in November.
Yeah.
So, October,
Right.
and that's a biannual one, the Yamagata Festival. So we're hoping to go into that, and then from that kind of springboard into a theatrical, possibly, or certainly a TV distribution deal after that. So they haven't. Is
the answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you? As you were making the documentary, did you have any kind of gauge about how they were kind of taking the question and like?
Yeah, I think as we were looking for the family, we actually met a number of other families who had fathers or grandparents in the camps. So there was an awful lot of, we just didn't know anything about this type of response, or if they did, they weren't prepared to say it. But in general, I think enough time has passed now. I think it's also kind of a nice thing, the fact that we were Irish, so we weren't coming in as
English,
as a group of Americans or allies. We were just kind of, it's quite humbling as well. Like when you meet someone from Japan and they're like, "Where's Ireland?" And it's just like, okay, is that Iceland? And no, it's not Iceland. It's like Ireland. And then where is Ireland? Like, it's kind of near England. So whatever opinion we have of ourselves, it was quite. It was
knocked back a bit.
Then.
But that is interesting though, like the fact that we could do it because we're Irish, so we were neutral anyway.
I think it helped.
Yeah,
I think it helped, and certainly in the discussions that we had a translator and a fixer, that there's been an awful lot of. There'd be many ex-POWs from Australia, New Zealand, America. So I think an Irish angle helped. There is this. Just to contradict what I said earlier, there is, a sense of a goodwill towards Ireland in Japan. And I don't think that was a hindrance at all.
Yeah, because the fact that we had no kind of part to play in it, obviously that would be a lot more neutral in it.
One of the other things that we experienced, we got the assistance of a lot of the media, like the newspapers and the local TV channels, were helping us track down the families. And some of the younger journalists that I was meeting were like, they genuinely didn't know anything about the war.
Really?
So they were kind of like, yeah, we're really interested in the war because we just don't know anything about it. And one of the guys who was about 28 or 30 was like, so what were the camps like? Were they good or were they bad? And I was like,
they were bad.
They were, they were really terrible. So, and he had that, he was a very intelligent guy. So to that level of, unawareness,
ignorance, basically,
of the topic, it was kind of like, really, okay, you actually
you
thought it
don't
might
know
have been
anything about it. Yeah.
All right, so it was interesting when you see that face to your, in your face.
There's almost a documentary in that, I suppose, like the fact that there's something ignorant in it. Okay, Gary Lennon, we will leave it there. Thank you very much for coming in.
Sure, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers.